The evening sky over Colony Sector 9 was gray and heavy, filled with dust and fading lights from passing ships. The air smelled of rust and old smoke. Along the cracked roads, a young man named Evan Reed walked slowly, his worn boots making soft sounds in the puddles left by the rain. His jacket was too thin for the cold and his hands were trembling, but not from fear. From hunger and exhaustion. He had left Earth 6 months ago. His mother was sick and the medicine she needed was expensive. Every job he found had been taken by machines or people with better records. But he refused to give up. He carried one small bag with him and an old paper flyer he had picked up that morning. The words on it were faded but clear. Workers wanted. Good pay. Apply at Sector Dock 42. Evan repeated those words in his head again and again as he walked, hoping this time it would be real work, not another scam. He needed this job. Any job before the next medicine payment was due. When he reached Dock 42, the place looked deserted. A long fence made of rusted metal surrounded the area, and a single lamp flickered weakly near the gate. The Workers' Wanted sign was nailed crookedly to a post, the letters smeared by rain. The silence around him felt wrong. Too quiet, too empty. Then from the corner of his eye he saw movement. A small figure stood near the sign, half hidden behind the gate. Evan took a few steps closer. It was a child, or something that looked like one. She was small, maybe 8 or 9 years old, with pale blue skin that shimmered under the weak light. Her clothes were torn, her feet bare, and her eyes, large and violet, watched him with a strange mix of fear and hope. Evan froze. He had seen aliens before, of course. The colonies were full of different species, but never a child, alone out here at night. The little girl clutched the same flyer in her tiny hands. Her voice was soft and trembling when she spoke. Are you here for work too? Evan nodded slowly. Yeah, you? She looked down as if ashamed. I have to find work. For food, he frowned. You shouldn't be here alone, kid. This place doesn't look safe. Before she could answer, the sound of engines broke the silence. A black hover vehicle rolled toward them, its lights off, moving too quietly to be normal transport. Evan's heartbeat quickened. The girl's face turned pale. From the vehicle, 3 men stepped out, tall, wearing dark armor with silver insignias on their shoulders. Their eyes were hidden behind tinted visors. One of them held a scanning device. The other carried a long weapon. Evan instinctively stepped in front of the girl. What's going on? He asked, trying to sound calm. The tallest man ignored him and aimed the scanner at the girl. A red light flashed across her body and the device beeped sharply. Unauthorized species, the man said coldly. This one isn't registered. The girl took a step back, whispering, Please, don't take me. Evan raised his hand slightly. Hey, she's just a kid. What did she do wrong? Step aside, human, the armored man ordered. She's property of the consortium. Evan blinked in disbelief. Property? She's a person. The man lifted his weapon. Last warning. Evan's heart raced. He didn't know what he was doing. His mind screamed to run, but his body didn't move. The girl was crying now, shaking behind him. Run. Evan whispered to her. But before she could move, the man fired. A bolt of blue light hit the ground beside them, leaving a burn mark in the dirt. Evan grabbed the girl's hand and pulled her through a side opening in the fence. Stop them, one of the men shouted. Evan and the girl ran down a narrow alley between old storage buildings. The lights above flickered and buzzed. He didn't look back. He could hear the footsteps of the enforcers, the whirring of drones above, the hum of the vehicle behind them. They turned a corner, climbed over a pile of crates, and slipped through a hole in a metal wall into an old factory yard. Inside, everything smelled of oil and dust. Machines stood like skeletons in the dark. Evan stopped to catch his breath. The girl clung to his arm, breathing fast. Who were they? He asked. She looked at him with those glowing eyes full of tears. They take children like me, she said softly. We never come back. Evan stared at her, realizing the truth. This wasn't a job site. It was a trap, a way to capture desperate workers and lost aliens. He looked at the trembling child and then back at the dark gate outside. His mother's face flashed in his mind. She had always told him to help those who couldn't help themselves. He sighed, tightening his grip on the little girl's hand. Okay, kid, he said quietly. You're safe with me. We'll figure this out. Outside, the black vehicle stopped near the fence. The armored men scanned the ground, following the faint footprints into the night. Evan didn't know where to go, but one thing was clear. His life had just changed forever. And somewhere deep in the factory, a faint blue light began to glow. The rain turned into mist as Evan and the little alien girl slipped deeper into the shadows of the old factory. The heavy door creaked shut behind them, echoing through the empty halls. Inside, everything smelled like metal, oil, and time. Dust floated through beams of pale blue light leaking from cracks in the ceiling. Evan could barely see, but he didn't dare turn on his flashlight. The girl clung to his sleeve, her bare feet making soft sounds against the cold floor. Somewhere behind them, faint mechanical hums echoed. The enforcers were still searching. Evan crouched behind an overturned crate and whispered, "We'll stay quiet till they pass." The girl nodded, her violet eyes glowing faintly in the dark. She was trembling, but not from fear alone. There was something else, an energy, a soft hum coming from her body like a heartbeat made of light. Evan stared at her for a moment. "What's your name, kid?" "Lyra," she whispered. "My name is Lyra." "All right, Lyra, I'm Evan. We'll find a way out when it's safe." She looked up at him with shy curiosity. "You didn't leave me behind." Evan gave a tired half-smile. Didn't feel right. Lyra blinked slowly as if trying to understand kindness for the first time. They stayed quiet for several minutes. Outside, the sound of engines faded. The enforcers were moving to another block. Evan let out a slow breath and stood. "Okay, come on. Let's see if there's a back exit." The factory stretched endlessly. Dark halls, broken machines, conveyor belts frozen in time. But some of the old tech still hummed softly, as if dreaming. Evan brushed his hand along one wall. This place must have been shut down years ago. Lyra followed him carefully, her eyes scanning the strange human machines. "They used to make ships here," she said softly. "Small ones. For miners." Evan turned to her in surprise. "You know this place?" "My people helped build them once," she said. "Before the consortium came." He frowned. "You mean those armored guys?" She nodded slowly, her small fingers tightening around the edge of his coat. "They said my kind was made for work. We were useful. Then when we got tired, they said we were broken." Evan stopped walking, his stomach twisted. She said it so simply, as if she didn't even know how wrong it was. He crouched beside her. "No one's broken, Lyra, you hear me?" Her eyes shimmered faintly, and for a moment, her sadness filled the whole room. Suddenly, the floor under their feet vibrated. A soft hum rose from the old machines. Evan looked around, confused. "What was that?" Lyra looked at her hands. The light in her palms was growing brighter, pulsing like a heartbeat. The closer she got to the machinery, the more the lights flickered to life. Evan stepped back as one of the factory consoles lit up, its screens flickering on after years of silence. "Are you doing that?" He whispered. Lyra's voice trembled. "I don't mean to. It just happens when I get scared." The machines around them buzzed louder. Sparks flickered in the dark. Then a holographic display projected into the air, showing strange symbols and words Evan couldn't read. On the screen, an old logo appeared, property of the Consortium Energy Division. Evan's heart sank. "This isn't just a factory," he muttered. "It's one of their labs." A voice came from the shadows behind them, mechanical and low. "Unauthorized power source detected." Evan grabbed Lyra's hand. "We're leaving." But the metal door at the far end slammed shut with a hiss. Heavy locks sealed in place. Red lights flashed above them. Lyra's glow brightened until the entire room was bathed in a soft blue aura. Her voice shook. "They can track me when I do this. They can feel it." Evan looked toward a staircase leading up to the catwalks. "Then we'll move fast." They climbed quickly, metal stairs groaning beneath their steps. Below, robotic arms began to twitch back to life, reaching aimlessly through the air. Halfway across the upper walkway, Evan stopped and stared down. In the center of the room, an ancient generator was starting to hum. Its lights pulsed in sync with Lyra's heartbeat. "What are you?" he asked softly. Lyra looked at the machine, tears in her eyes. "They said we were made, not born. They put a light inside us so we could never die. But they take it away when they want." Evan didn't understand everything she said, but he understood enough. He saw the pain in her face, the kind only a child shouldn't know. He placed a hand on her shoulder. They're not taking anything from you again. Not while I'm here. Below them, the factory's systems fully powered on. Screens blinked. Drones activated. Somewhere deep within the walls, a signal was sent. A red light flashed on the nearest terminal. Location uploaded. Enforcers en route. Evan's blood ran cold. We've got to move now. Lyra's glow dimmed, but her small hand tightened around his. As they raced toward the upper exit, the factory lights behind them came alive, one by one, like eyes opening in the dark. And far above, beyond the clouds, a satellite shifted its gaze, locking onto a tiny blue signal that pulsed like a heartbeat in the night. The night sky above the colony burned with quiet danger. Drones moved like dark stars, scanning the broken rooftops below. Their red lights blinked slowly, searching for one signal, one trace of blue energy that belonged to the little alien girl. Inside the old factory, Evan and Lyra crouched in the shadows near the upper exit. The cold wind slipped through the cracks of the metal walls, carrying faint sounds from outside. Boots, engines, orders shouted through comms. The enforcers had arrived. Evan peeked through a gap in the wall. A black transport hovered near the main gate. Armored men fanned out, scanning the area with hand devices. Each step they took made the ground vibrate. They're here, Evan whispered. Lyra clung to his sleeve, her wide violet eyes glimmering with fear. They can feel the light inside me, she said. They always know. He looked at her, seeing that faint glow again on her neck, pulsing like a heartbeat. Then we have to hide that light, kid. She nodded, closed her eyes, and took a deep breath. Slowly her glow faded until her skin looked dull and gray, almost human. Evan was amazed. How did you? My mother taught me, Lyra said softly. Before they took her away. The words cut through the air like a blade. Evan didn't ask more. He simply whispered, "We'll keep moving until they lose us." He led her down a narrow passage, stepping carefully over pipes and cables. The metal groaned under their weight. Every sound felt too loud. From below, a voice echoed through a speaker, cold and commanding. The signal was traced to this building. Sweep every floor. Bring the Nira child alive. Lyra froze. Her breathing quickened. Evan turned to her and placed a finger to his lips. Hey, look at me. You're safe with me, all right? She nodded shakily, but her hands were trembling. They reached a broken window overlooking the back alley. The drop wasn't too far. Evan kicked away the cracked glass and whispered, "We'll go out this way." But before they could climb through, a red beam of light passed across the wall. One of the drones had found them. Down. Evan shouted. He pulled Lyra behind a machine just as a blaster shot tore through the air. Sparks flew. The sound was deafening. More drones swarmed toward the window, mechanical wings humming. Evan picked up a rusted wrench and threw it at one of them, knocking it aside. The explosion sent smoke across the floor. Lyra covered her ears, terrified. "They'll catch us," she cried. "Not if we move now." Evan grabbed her hand and ran toward a stairwell. Alarms blared through the building as they rushed down. Outside, the enforcers moved in formation, entering from both sides. Their leader, a tall man with silver armor, raised his scanner again. Her energy spike, inside the generator room. Evan and Lyra burst through a side door, stumbling into a long hallway lined with empty tanks. The machines were dead, but the walls still hummed faintly with stored power. Lyra looked around, her hands glowing slightly again. "I can make them stop," she said. "I can confuse their scanners." Evan looked at her uncertainly. "Can you do that without hurting yourself?" She hesitated. "I can try." Before he could answer, she placed her hand on the metal wall. A soft pulse spread through the pipes, lighting them with blue lines that danced like veins. The hum grew louder, and for a moment all the enforcers' scanners outside went dark. "What happened to our signal?" One of them shouted. "We've lost the trace." Lyra fell to her knees, her body trembling. Evan caught her before she hit the ground. Her small hands were ice cold. "Easy, kid, easy," he said, holding her close. "You did good. Real good." She looked up weakly. "Did we make it?" He nodded, even though he wasn't sure. "For now." Suddenly a heavy crash came from above. One of the drones broke through the roof, its red eye glowing in the dark. Evan pulled Lyra behind a machine, but the drone turned its sensor toward them. It scanned. It beeped once, then stopped. Evan stared in confusion until he noticed the blue liquid dripping from the broken pipe above. It had splashed over the drone's sensor, blocking its vision. "Guess luck's still on our side," he whispered. He helped Lyra stand, and they slipped out through a side door into the rain. The night air was freezing, but freedom felt warm. Behind them, the factory lights flickered and died. The enforcers stood in the shadows, silent and waiting. Their leader turned toward the sky and pressed a button on his wrist device. "She's not just a runaway," he said quietly. "She's the prototype. If the child bonds with a human, the core may awaken." High above, a satellite shifted its orbit again, tracking their faint trail across the colony. And far below, in the alley, Evan held Lyra's hand and whispered, "We're not done yet, little one. We've got to find somewhere they can't reach us." Lyra looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper. "Do humans always protect strangers?" Evan smiled faintly. "Not always. But my mom raised me to try." The wind carried their words away into the night. And somewhere beyond the horizon, the hunt began again. The night never seemed to end on Colony Sector 9. Cold neon lights flickered over broken streets as Evan carried Lyra through the back alleys. Her small hand clutched his jacket, her head resting weakly against his shoulder. She hadn't spoken for hours. Her glow had faded to a dull shimmer like a dying ember. Evan's arms ached, but he didn't stop. He followed the old freight lines until he reached the slums on the edge of the industrial zone, a place where no one asked questions. There, behind a sign that read "Repairs and Medical" and "Open 24 hours," he found a rusted door. He knocked once, then again harder. After a few seconds, a metallic voice replied, "State your name and purpose." Evan hesitated. "I need help. There's a child. She's hurt." The door hissed open just enough for a single red eye to appear, the lens of a security bot. It scanned him from head to toe. Then a tired human voice from inside said, "Bring her in, quickly." Evan stepped into a small, dimly lit room filled with old machines and medical tools. The air smelled like oil and antiseptic. A tall man with gray hair and mechanical arms turned toward him. His eyes, pale and tired, studied them carefully. "I'm Dr. Solon," the man said. "Put her on the table." Evan did as he was told. Lyra looked tiny on the steel bed, her breathing shallow. The doctor pressed a few buttons on his wrist and soft light scanned her body. His expression changed immediately. "Where did you find her?" he asked sharply. Evan frowned. "By the docks. She was looking for work." Dr. Solon's metallic hand trembled slightly. "Work? No. Not her kind." He adjusted the scanner and a hologram appeared above Lyra's chest. A small, glowing sphere inside her heart, spinning like a miniature sun. Evan stepped back. "What is that?" Solon's voice dropped to a whisper. "A quantum core. It's alive," Evan blinked. "Alive?" Yes, the Nera children were not born. They were built, engineered by the consortium decades ago. Each one carries a living energy core meant to power entire colonies. They were supposed to be experiments, then weapons. Evan stared at Lyra's small, fragile face. "She's not a weapon. She's a kid." The doctor nodded slowly. "I know, but the consortium doesn't see it that way. They think they own her." Lyra stirred weakly and opened her eyes. "Doctor, they said you were gone." Solon froze. You know me?" She nodded faintly. "You were at the lab. You stopped one of them from hurting us." A deep sadness filled Solon's eyes. "I tried. I couldn't save you all." Evan looked between them. "What happened to the others?" Solon shook his head. "Most were destroyed when they ran out of power. The rest vanished. If this child survived, then she's the last one." Silence filled the room. The only sound was the faint hum of machines. Evan clenched his fists. "Then we need to get her far away from here." The doctor hesitated. "You don't understand. The consortium will never stop. They can track her energy no matter where she goes." "Then cut the tracker," Evan said. "You're a doctor, aren't you?" Solon sighed. "It's not that simple. The core is tied to her heart. If I tamper with it, she could die." Evan looked down at Lyra, who was staring at him through half-closed eyes. He could see fear there, but also trust. She believed he would find a way. "Then help me hide her," Evan said. "Fake her records. Change her ID, something." Solon looked at him for a long time, then nodded. "All right. But after this, you both disappear. If they trace you here, I'll be finished too." He worked quickly, connecting Lyra to old terminals and rewriting her energy signature. Her faint blue light dimmed until the machines could no longer detect her. "There," Solon said quietly. "She'll read as human now." For a while, Evan let out a breath of relief. "Thank you, Doctor." Solon didn't smile. "Don't thank me. Just go, and Evan..." He paused. "If her power ever activates again, it will call them straight to you. Protect her, but don't let the core wake up." Evan nodded grimly. "I'll keep her safe." As he lifted Lyra into his arms again, the old doctor watched silently, eyes full of regret. When they stepped outside, the colony sky was still dark, but the wind carried a strange electric hum. Somewhere above, the satellites adjusted their orbit, scanning the surface for a single lost spark of blue light. Back inside, Dr. Solon stood alone. He looked at the monitor, still glowing faintly with Lyra's readings. Under the energy trace, a warning message blinked. "Core level rising. Synchronization detected." The doctor whispered to himself, "No, it's already begun." Outside, Evan held Lyra close as they disappeared into the misty streets. The lights flickered across their path like dying stars, and, though neither of them knew it yet, every step was leading them toward a war that started long before either was born. The wind carried the smell of salt and smoke as dawn crept over the colony's horizon. Cargo ships floated above the distant sea, their engines humming softly. Evan stood near the shadow of an old storage building, his jacket soaked from the rain. Lyra slept in his arms, her head resting against his chest. He had not slept in 2 days. His body ached, but his mind refused to rest. Every sound made him turn. Every light in the distance made him think the enforcers had found them again. When the first rays of sunlight touched the dock, Evan saw a figure waiting by the pier, a tall man in a black coat with a sharp face and cybernetic eye. That was Karis, the smuggler Dr. Solon had promised would help them. Evan approached carefully. "You're Karis?" The man turned, his mechanical eye glowing faintly red. "Depends who's asking. Solon sent me," Evan said quietly. "We need transport off this planet fast." Karis studied him for a moment, then glanced at the small bundle in Evan's arms. "That the girl?" Evan nodded. "She's just a kid." "Yeah," Karis muttered. "And trouble follows kids like her." He spit to the side, then motioned toward a cargo ship half hidden by fog. "Ship leaves in 20 minutes. I can get you both on board if you got the credits." Evan shook his head. "No money." "But Solon said..." Karis cut him off. "Solon owes me too much already. But fine, you helped a kid. I'll do one good thing before I die." Evan didn't trust him, but he didn't have a choice. Lyra stirred in his arms, her violet eyes fluttering open. "Are we leaving?" she whispered. "Soon, kid," Evan said softly. "We're almost free." Karis turned away, activating his comms. "Dock security's loose today. Should be easy," but his voice carried something, too calm, too rehearsed. Evan felt it, that tight, cold feeling in his chest. Something was wrong. As they walked toward the ship, Evan noticed faint red dots blinking on the dock cranes above. Not lights, scanners. "Karis," he said slowly. "Who's watching us?" The smuggler didn't answer. He stopped, his shoulders tense. Then he sighed and turned, looking almost sorry. "You're not the first to come here, you know. They pay well for her kind." Evan's heart sank. "You sold us." Karis stepped back, holding up a small transmitter. "Don't make me feel worse than I already do, man. They said no one would get hurt if I just called it in." Before Evan could move, a blast of light hit the ground beside them. The air filled with smoke and the hum of engines. 3 enforcer dropships appeared overhead, their lights cutting through the fog. Lyra gasped and clung to Evan. "They found us." "Yeah," he said through clenched teeth, "and they're not taking you." Evan grabbed Karis by the collar and shoved him aside. "You should have run when you had the chance." Karis stumbled backward, guilt flashing in his eye. "You can't win against them." Evan didn't reply. He ran, holding Lyra close, weaving between crates as blaster shots rained down. Sparks flew. Alarm screamed, "Stop! You are harboring consortium property," one enforcer shouted. Evan ducked behind a fuel container, breathing hard. His mind raced. The ship was still 20 meters away, too far. Lyra's voice trembled. "They'll hurt you because of me." He looked at her and smiled weakly. "Then they'll have to go through me first." He stood, grabbed a fallen blaster, and fired at the nearest enforcer. The shot hit true, knocking the man off his feet. Evan had never handled alien tech before, but adrenaline made him fast. He moved with desperate precision, shielding Lyra with his body. The enforcers advanced in formation, firing nonstop. The dock turned into a storm of smoke and noise. Then suddenly everything stopped. The air shimmered blue. Evan turned. Lyra was standing behind him, her small hands glowing brighter than ever. The ground beneath her feet vibrated. Her eyes turned pure white, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I don't want them to hurt you," she cried. Before Evan could stop her, light exploded outward from her body. Pure, burning energy. The blast threw the enforcers off their feet. Drones crashed into the sea. Ships powered down. The entire dock went silent. When the light faded, Lyra collapsed. Evan rushed to her, kneeling beside her trembling form. Her breathing was shallow but steady. Karis crawled from behind a crate, staring at the wreckage in disbelief. What is she?" Evan looked at him coldly. "She's someone you'll never sell again." Karis lowered his eyes, ashamed. "I didn't think she was real. I didn't think she'd do that." Evan lifted Lyra into his arms again. "Next time, think before you trade a life." He turned toward the open ship ramp, smoke swirling around him. Behind him, Karis shouted, "Where will you go? The consortium will never stop." Evan didn't look back. "Then I won't stop either." As the ship door closed behind them, the sea wind howled across the broken dock. The wreckage still glowed faintly blue where Lyra's power had touched it. And above the colony, a single satellite pulsed red, sending a silent message to the consortium's command. Target found. Energy core active. Somewhere deep in the black of space, the hunt began anew. The stars stretched endlessly outside the small ship's window, cold and silent. The hum of the old engines echoed through the cargo bay, steady but tired, like the heartbeat of something running on pure will. Evan sat on the floor beside Lyra, wrapping a blanket around her small shoulders. She hadn't spoken since the explosion at the docks. Her glow was gone now, replaced by a pale gray tone. Her eyes were half open, unfocused, as if her strength had drifted somewhere far away. Evan's arm was bandaged where he'd been hit by shrapnel. The wound burned, but he ignored it. Pain didn't matter, not when the child beside him looked so fragile, so breakable. He leaned back against the wall, trying to steady his breathing. The stars outside reminded him of home, of Earth, of his mother's small apartment near the edge of the city. She used to tell him stories about angels and light. Now, sitting beside this little alien, he wondered if she had been closer to truth than anyone realized. After a long silence, Lyra's voice broke softly through the quiet. "Did we escape?" Evan smiled faintly. "For now. Will they come again?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "They will, but they'll have to catch us first." Lyra looked down at her hands. "I hurt people," she whispered. "At the docks? I didn't mean to." Evan shook his head. "You saved me. You saved both of us." Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't want to. I don't want this power." Evan reached out and gently held her hand. "Listen, kid. Power doesn't make you bad. What you choose to do with it does." Her small fingers squeezed his. "You're not afraid of me?" He smiled tiredly. "Not even a little." Lyra blinked, surprised, as if no one had ever said that to her before. The corners of her lips trembled in something that almost looked like a smile. But then the ship jolted. Warning lights flashed red across the dashboard. Evan stood quickly, moving to the cockpit. "Not now," he muttered. The console flickered and old systems failing one by one. "Fuel cells dying," he said under his breath. "We're going down." Lyra stood weakly at the doorway. "Can't you fix it?" "Not fast enough," Evan said. "Hang on to something." Outside, the stars began to spin as the ship tilted toward a dark planet below, covered in lightning storms and glowing clouds. The hull rattled, alarms screamed, and fire trailed from the wings. Evan grabbed the controls, gritting his teeth. "Come on, hold together." The ship hit the upper atmosphere. Thunder cracked. Gravity slammed them against the seats. Lyra cried out as sparks burst from the ceiling. Then everything went white. When Evan opened his eyes, he was lying on soft soil. The rain was falling, warm, heavy rain that smelled like metal and earth. The ship had crashed in a dense jungle of glowing plants. The air shimmered with strange energy. He groaned, forcing himself to sit up. "Lyra?" A faint light glowed nearby. She was sitting by the broken ship, staring at her reflection in a puddle. Her glow was returning, brighter than before, but gentler, calmer. Evan limped toward her. "You okay?" She nodded. "This planet, it feels alive." Evan looked around. Every tree pulsed faint blue light through its roots, almost like veins. The place seemed to hum in harmony with her heartbeat. She looked at him suddenly, worry in her eyes. "You're hurt again." "It's nothing," he said, but when he tried to move, pain shot through his shoulder. Lyra crawled closer, placing her small hand on the wound. "Wait." Evan began, but her hand was already glowing. Warmth spread through his body, not burning but comforting. The pain faded. His breathing steadied. When she pulled her hand away, her light dimmed a little. "It takes my energy," she whispered. "I can only do it for people I trust." Evan looked at her, really looked at her, and saw more than fear or power. He saw kindness, innocence, and something that didn't belong to any machine or experiment, a soul. "Thank you, Lyra," he said quietly. She smiled faintly. "You called me Lyra, not Kid." He chuckled softly. "Guess you've earned it." The storm raged in the distance, flashes of lightning painting the jungle silver. Evan gazed toward the sky, where broken pieces of their ship still burned as they fell. "They'll see the crash," he said. "They'll come," Lyra nodded. "Then we'll be ready." Evan raised an eyebrow. "We?" She looked up at him, her violet eyes bright again. "You saved me when you didn't have to. Now I'll save you when you need it." He didn't argue. He couldn't. He just smiled and pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders as the storm howled. Above them, a satellite glided through orbit, its sensors flickering uncertainly. The blue signal it once tracked was gone, replaced by something new. A second pulse. A human one. The machine logged a single line before going dark. Core synchronization complete, unknown entity detected, and somewhere deep inside Lyra's chest. Her light pulsed in perfect rhythm with Evan's heartbeat. The storm never stopped on the planet below. Thunder rolled across the sky like a living beast, and lightning painted the mountains in blinding flashes of white. The wrecked ship lay silent in the valley, surrounded by the glow of alien plants that swayed in the wind like ghosts. Evan stood outside in the rain, tightening the straps on his torn jacket. The air buzzed with static. He looked up and saw them. 3 dark shapes falling through the clouds. Dropships. The consortium had found them. Inside the broken ship, Lyra sat by the console, watching him through the cracked window. Her hands trembled, and the faint blue light inside her chest flickered like a candle fighting the wind. "They're here, aren't they?" she whispered. Evan nodded, never looking back. "Yeah, they are." He grabbed the old blaster from the crate and checked its charge, 1 bar left. Not enough to win, but enough to make them remember. Lyra ran out into the rain, her feet splashing through the mud. "You can't fight them alone." He gave her a small smile. "I won't. You'll be safe in the caves behind the ridge. When I say go, you run and don't look back." She shook her head, tears mixing with the rain. "You promised you'd stay with me." "I will," he said softly, "in a way that matters." Above them, the first dropship landed. Armored soldiers poured out, moving in perfect formation, their weapons glowing red in the storm. The leader, the tall one with silver armor, stepped forward, visor shining. He raised his voice through the comms. "Return the Nira child, human. You don't understand what she carries." Evan's voice cut through the storm. "She's not your experiment. She's not your property. She's a person." The commander tilted his head. "You think you can protect her from what she is?" Evan took 1 slow step forward. "No, I'll protect her from what you are." A shot of plasma hit the ground near his feet, burning the soil. The enforcers fanned out, circling. Evan fired once, dropping 1 soldier. But there were too many. Blasts lit the rain. The air turned to fire and smoke. Evan ducked behind a rock, shooting back until his weapon died with a soft click. He was breathing hard, his shoulder bleeding again, but he didn't stop. "Evan!" Lyra cried, running toward him. "They'll kill you!" He turned to her, shouting through the storm. "Stay back, Lyra." But she didn't listen. She stepped into the open, her eyes glowing brighter than ever before. The soldiers paused, the scanners on their helmets flashing warnings. Her energy readings were rising fast. The commander lifted his weapon. "Don't let her activate." "Contain her now." Evan reached for her, but it was too late. Lyra's voice broke through the rain. "You said I could choose what to do with my power." "I did," Evan said softly, his voice shaking. "Then I choose to save you." The light exploded from her like dawn breaking across the universe. The storm froze midair. The thunder silenced. Every raindrop hung still for one impossible moment. The enforcers' weapons melted. Their ships lost power and fell, crashing into the mud. The commander shouted something, but his voice was swallowed by the sound of light. Evan shielded his face, calling out her name, but her glow was too bright to see through. He could feel the heat, the energy, the heartbeat of something alive and infinite. Then, silence. When the light faded, the storm clouds parted. The sky above was clear for the first time in centuries. The plants around them glowed softly, whispering in the wind. Evan opened his eyes. The battlefield was empty. The enforcers were gone. Their ships turned to ash. Only the broken blaster lay beside him, and Lyra. She was lying a few feet away, her chest dim but still pulsing faint blue. He crawled to her side and held her close. Her eyes fluttered open. "Did we win?" she asked weakly. He smiled through his tears. "Yeah, we did." She looked up at the clear sky, her voice fading. "It's quiet now. I can't hear them anymore." Evan brushed a strand of wet hair from her face. "Rest, Lyra. You're free now." Her small hand touched his cheek. You feel warm. Like home." Her glow dimmed and her eyes slowly closed. The light in her chest flickered one last time, then went still. Evan held her tighter, tears mixing with the rain. The storm was gone, but inside him something broke. Hours later, when the sun rose, he buried her near the ship under the glowing trees. The light of the plants reflected off the soil, wrapping her resting place in soft blue color, like she was still shining. He looked at the sky one last time before walking back toward the mountains. The wind carried her voice in his memory. "You're not afraid of me?" And he whispered into the dawn, "Never." Far above, in orbit, the satellites blinked and powered down. The signal they had chased for years had vanished. But a new one pulsed faintly. Not blue, not mechanical. Human. The machine recorded one final message. Energy transfer complete. Core preserved. On Earth, weeks later, an old woman woke in her small apartment, her illness gone. Beside her bed glowed a faint blue light, gentle, warm, and alive. She smiled softly, whispering, "Evan, thank you." And somewhere beyond the stars, the light of a little alien girl drifted free at last, shining like hope in the endless dark.